In this episode of the Connor Carrick podcast.
You know, if coach does yell at you and you are feeling more anxious, it's an invitation to go inward and say, okay, what is coming up for me right now? Why am I feeling anxious? What's triggering me here? And I think for a lot of us, I would say this is very true in sport. I'd say this is very true in the population at large, is we do not want to feel our feelings. Like if you are feeling anxious, you will do anything to make that anxiety go away. But what I think is that is such a gift for you to say, okay, what is the trigger here? Why is this making me feel anxious? And sit with that and let that marinate.
Welcome everyone to the Connor Carrick podcast. I'm your host, New Jersey Devils defenseman Connor Carrick. Today with Dr. Stephanie Estima, we will talk about the vulnerability of starting a podcast and the fear of judgment. We discuss our desire to balance like our highest self, our superhero self with our inner critic and the tug of war that exists there. This truly is maybe a little bit of a different podcast. If you come here if you listen to me mostly talk with hockey friends and teammates that I've played with, I do enjoy talking about the art of life. And Dr. Stephanie Estima and her husband Giovanni Marsico are two people that I really look up to in this realm. And truly any time with her is a gift. I learned a lot in this podcast today, and I know you will. Thank you for joining us today. Let's do this. So, Steph, I'm not sure if you caught either the previous podcast, but really, it's a podcast around high performance. It's a podcast around mental, physical health, and well-being. I mean, this is our DNA. This is our sweet spot. And I'm thrilled that you're on because I connect with you in a couple different ways. I think you have this like old school work ethic and like inner reflection, and that fire can burn hot sometimes. We've talked about that. We talked about that on your podcast, Better. But you have this new school, like worldliness, try to learn how to get out of your own way, holistic sense of play that, I think is something I want to talk about. And so, much like, we're on your podcast, we talked about sort of my development, how I came to be. I in looking up, some of your bio, it says big-hearted chiropractor with interest in functional neurology, brain optimization, and weight loss. So we can talk, let's start there, and then let's transition to a little bit of your platform building efforts and how you've been so successful with that. And I think you've done it a really nice job. And I was honored, honestly, when you asked me to be on your podcast in the start. Mm-hmm. But
top 10 draft.
Let's start a little bit of the why. Let's start with, why were you able to build this successful career and why do you have the habits that you do?
Well, I think, you said I have this old world work ethic. And for me, I think that was like anybody, there's multiple reasons why, influences that people have on you. And there's a couple of, tipping points for me. One of them was when I was 16, my parents split up. They decided to get divorced. It was a relatively contentious split. And I remember seeing my mother, who was at the time, hadn't been in the workforce for at least 16 years, and had given up, through the stories and stuff that she had told me, her dreams, her career, her dreams of her own career and her own pursuits. And then at the age of, 40, whatever, having to find a way to make money. And I remember promising myself, like, I will never be put in that position. I will always make sure that the person that I lean on is me. And whether or not that's an appropriate response to the situation, I'll leave that up to any psychiatrist or psychologist that you have on here. But I made a commitment to myself that I was going to be someone who could always provide for myself. So that was a really, and then I think a divorce in it, like, when you see your parents divorce and it's relatively ugly, it just, it kind of sticks with you. So there was that. And then when you start, for me, I discovered my intelligence. Like I always sort of never really paid attention to school, would just kind of get by with B's or whatever. And I really dove into my academics or my academia at that time and was like, oh, I'm actually really good at this. This is actually like, I'm the top person. Oh, I'm on the dean's list. Oh, I'm on the, so once you start, almost getting in competition with yourself, to see, oh, you got an 85. Oh, let's see, like next time, let's see if we can punch out a 90. I think when you start, almost like gaming it with yourself, you realize that there's no end to that. There's always a new application, some way to integrate another, more information. There's always ways that you can be leveling up. So through my schooling, so I went to U of T, University of Toronto, for neuroscience and psychology, and then went to, finished a 4-year degree in 3 years, because like taking summers off, it's like, enjoy the sunshine. Why would I ever do that? I would take 2 or 3 more courses over the summer. So I ended up, graduating early and then, was accepted into the, chiropractic school of my choice. And then went to chiropractic school there. So, and it's just, it's just like neurons that fire together, right? Like the more you fire on that pathway, the more grooves you get, the easier it is to fire. So, you compete with yourself and you try to get better through university. That follows you in through, your professional training. And then, it's really followed me ever since, like through my, building up of my practice, my brick and mortar practice, which I have since, I was in private practice in Toronto for 16 years. And now I have moved my practice more online now.
Well, I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, good timing given, we're all on quarantine right now. But and you said something there that I thought was, you can always level up.
Always.
Mm-hmm. And your podcast is called Better with Dr. Stephanie Estima. Yes. So, and as a pro hockey player, as a pro athlete, this was always the process that I engaged with growing up. My dad and he was really the dreamer in the family. And that was always the conversation. Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? And how do those, translate to the National Hockey League, to the NHL game? And I grew really aware of always where I was falling short. Mm-hmm. And, I was always coached as a kid, never be satisfied, never be satisfied. Always know you could do better. So how do you manage that inner fire, that inner juice that is such a gift? Because it is a gift. It can show up as energy in the morning. I find sometimes for me, it shows up as anxiety. Like I have this mission to chase my potential. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you balance that inner fire with, frankly, being happy, with living a happy life?
Yeah, it's definitely a dance for sure. And I think that, to your point, it can show up as energy. It can show up as like expansive energy where you are creating and producing. And, for me, I have, I live on momentum. If I don't feel like I am moving towards something, you might as well poke my eyes out. Like it's air for me. So I think, and I do have and I will be, in the spirit of being open and honest and transparent with you and your listeners, I do have a very harsh inner critic. Like this inner critic is a belligerent, cross-examining lawyer, that is like, you're not, why did you do that? Why did you make that choice? Why did you think you could make that choice? Who do you think you are? So I definitely have an internal dialogue that asks me, am I good enough? Am I capable enough? Am I smart? Am I pretty enough? Am I worthy? I have all of that. And what I've discovered is I also have another voice in my head. So I would call that like my inner critic. The other one is like the inner victim, right? And it's like they're Thelma and Louise, like they play off of each other. So like the inner critic asks, like, who do you think you are to do this? And then if you don't reach whatever unattainable metric that inner critic has set out for you, your inner victim is like, it's because you're a loser. It's because it's because you are not supposed to do these things. So, what I have learned over time, and this is how I, coming back to your question around, how are you happy? How do you experience any type of joy? is understanding that they're just voices, that they are just thoughts. They're coming from a certain part of my brain. And this is why I love neurology and, understanding the brain so much, because you can you can help yourself. But these messages, you can be the observer of these messages, but not necessarily the recipient of them. So you can observe the message that maybe you don't have the skills or all the skill set yet to, insert goal here, right? Like maybe you don't have the, the fortitude to start a podcast, or you don't have the interview skills to start a podcast, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I can say, thank you so much for sending me these messages. I know that you're trying to protect me, but like, I've got this. So it's almost like a dance between, an adult voice, or, my self-actualized, fully formed version of myself and my inner child, right? Like the baby Steffi who is scared and frightened and wants to feel safe. And those messages are often fear-based. So it's about listening to the voices and not trying to push them down and reject them, but to understand that they are there to keep you safe. But at the end of the day, I'm in the driver's seat.
And I appreciate you being so open and honest. I had every reason to believe in our relationship that you would, with our listener. And I know that, like, my audience, our audience today is going to gain a lot from it, but the joke's on everybody. I actually wanted to talk to you so I could learn about how to better deal with this. Cause my journey with, mindfulness, and I talked about it a little bit with the podcast I had, with Elliot Friedman, where mindfulness, when did it become something that sounds hippy dippy and not as, it's not the type A work ethic that I need. It's not intense. It's not fire. It's not all the things I identify with. Mm-hmm. And, what I found was, as I started to play in the NHL, an 82 game schedule where you play constantly, and you are so tested. There are late nights, you are traveling chronically. There's a lot of stressors that can push you towards, self-sabotage, or where you're indulging in emotions. Like, it's hard to get off that roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And, my journey with mindfulness was basically just realizing, coming to terms with those thoughts, those emotions are just a roller coaster, and I don't have to stay on the ride all the time.
Right. And your productivity doesn't need to be attached to the hostile cross-examining lawyer all the time. Like, you can still be incredibly productive, but just unhinge that productivity and unhinge the pursuit of the goal, so that it's not rooted in fear and it's not rooted in anger and self-hatred, that you can still do a lot of these things because those are the things that you are born to do. I've never had the dreams that I have for myself are meant for me, right? Like, I've never dreamt of being a professional. I've never dreamt of being in the NHL or a professional sports person, but I do dream about helping women, and I dream about public stages, and I dream about writing a book, and so the dreams that I have, and this is maybe a little bit of a dance between masculine energy and feminine energy. Like, I've spent most of my life in that masculine, like do, go. But in more recent years, there's and I'm tying this in with what you're talking about with mindfulness. I think mindfulness, people are like, oh, this hippy dippy are we allowed to say bullshit? Can you say,
go
can
for it? It's out now.
Like
yeah.
It's out now. This horse shit around, oh, well, like, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to, whatever, I'm going to reach some ethereal, perfect white slate of a mind. Like that's it. That's not what it is at all. It's about surrendering and getting in touch with your body and getting in touch with the way it feels in your body, which is a more, when we talk about feminine and masculine energy, it's a more feminine pursuit to surrender to that and to be accepting and nourishing of, some of the voices that are in your head and accepting all of who you are.
And I appreciate you talking about the pursuit to honor all of who you are. Because that, part of the question I wrestled with when I wanted to start this podcast was like, who am I? Who are you to get up in front of the mic and try to present what you think and what you think to the world? But I had a teammate, shout out to Miles Coolis, teammate I played with at the U.S. development team. And he used to call me Life, like it was his joke. Like because we would be talking about whether we wanted extra guacamole at Chipotle or something. And I would be like, man, what do you think this is all for? Like I would push the conversation to heavier topics. And this is, for me, a great way to like honor that part of myself. It doesn't serve me well sometimes, like between periods when, I have a game to play and the hamster upstairs is running on his wheel. And it may be better to turn it off and just play and just automate. But I found this whole process super rewarding. Like you can't ignore parts of you that are so apparent. And I thought it was interesting. You brought up the quote about, you do not dream of things that are not meant for you. I was listening to one of your recent podcasts and I wanted to talk to you about that today because there is something about that whisper, and I've always been someone that listened to that inner whisper that said, hey, do that thing. Yeah. Do that thing.
Yeah, I think if we all could quiet the hamster wheel, quiet that voice a little bit and just sink into our intuition, for all my understanding of functional neurology and, your body always knows. Your body always knows. If you can sink into your body and listen to the messages that he, she, or it, however you identify, is calling to you. And sometimes it's just like the littlest whisper. Like it's like this resonance that if you just pay attention to it, it'll always guide you. Whenever I've not listened to my intuition, I've hired, I've attracted people into the practice, into my clinical practice that were not meant to be in the practice. I've attracted toxic relationships, personal and professional. And whenever I have honored that voice, it's always served me well. So, for me, I have, like I've talked about like the book and like, I think we were talking a little bit in our pre-chat or in the emails we were exchanging kind of leading up to this, but I dream of allowing people or helping people to take back their power, particularly women, because I think that we are often sold messages of imperfection and consumerism over, creation. And we're told you're not enough until you get that mascara, or you wear the shoes that have the red on the heel, or you have, whatever. We're always being sold these things. And as such, I think that women in particular, and I think this is true for men and women, but as my experience being a woman, I have been able to, speak to that, where we always feel like we're not enough in some way. And I would just love to be able to give the tools in the same way when I was a chiropractor, I was really just giving the tools for someone to facilitate their own healing. Like it wasn't me who healed someone. It was me just kind of an intervention in their body and they did the work. But in the same way, for me to give someone a tool that they can integrate and free themselves, because I think that I think so often we look to the external for someone to either save us or fix us or do it for us. And if you can if you can shift away from blame to actually like taking 100% responsibility for exactly where you are and then moving forward from there, that's when I think you can totally reclaim your power.
And I think, you know what, another thing that you discuss is how you kind of use like a superhero identity to be able to create lanes for these, you know, I guess these different topics of your life to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've really tried to borrow from you and you and Giovanni, you know, introduced me to Todd Herman, the concept of having sort of like alter egos for different areas of your life.
Yeah.
You know, I am a very different person. I'm on, you know, quarantine right now. So I'm working out on my rooftop, and it's been a really difficult challenge in that there's not a car ride home from the gym.
Right.
There's just like 7 steps downstairs. So I've had to learn how to like turn off, okay, you know, masculine beast mode, trying to get after it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, trying to stay physically, you know, in shape to play if you know, the NHL comes out of its pause, to like gentle, home, husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how do you kind of use your different alter egos, your relationship with talk, like what being a superhero, what superpower means to you? Because I think once I gave myself permission to, it's not like any one aspect of myself wasn't welcome certain places, but you know, when I was at the rink, it was like, okay, Connor, like this is aggressive grit, take someone's head off time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's got to turn off when you walk in the door and take the dog out. Like that's different.
Time to be the Hulk. And then when you walk in the door, you're Bruce Banner. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely channel different people. There's a lot of people that I love. If I can turn the camera, I would show you, you know, Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel are examples for me of strong women who are also at the same time, particularly Wonder Woman, she also is able to do it from a place of love. Like love is the through line for her. Mm-hmm. Even though she's a badass and she fights Ares and she does all these things, she's at the end of the day, it's done from a place of nourishing intent. So I definitely channel her. There's like things that I will wear. Like, I don't know, for people who are listening to the podcast won't see this, but like I have this ring that kind of looks like, I only wear this when I'm either doing a podcast or I'm on stage. So I have that Todd Herman, like there's a piece of, you know, article of clothing or, you know, piece of jewelry that I like to put on where I feel like I'm turning into her so that I can serve. I definitely, you know, for my children, I can't be, you know, throwing spaceships, like I can't be flying through the air and like punching people in the face, you know, like I have to definitely channel a softer, more nourishing. So for me, the Sound of Music, what is her name? I always forget her name. The Fraulein, the main character in The Sound of Music. It's an old movie that I used to watch a lot as a kid, but she took care of these 16 children with love and she would play and she was playful. So there's different people that I try to embody for the different hats or the different silos in my life. So as a mother, you know, patience and playfulness and connection are really important to me. When I'm working with patients, sometimes you need to have a firm hand and say, listen, like you can't have caffeine, you know, or you can't do this or you can't do that. And then when I'm speaking, of course, you know, on a podcast like this, I want to be vulnerable, open and honest, but I want to also give other people permission through my example to be more of who they already are. So that would be, you know, me channeling Wonder Woman.
Well, I mean, that's just your the consciousness around your decisions of how you want to show up. Like, and that's what I guess has always been where my respect and my draw to you is you have a well-rounded, like you have a deep knowledge of nutrition and physical health. And, you know, anyone that follows you on Instagram can see that you do lift weights as a woman, you do train, you know, you'll do more playful work, whether it was like step, I was watching today, which Lexi, by the way, my wife wants to, know what step.
We're going to do it on Zoom.
We're going to do it on Zoom. Steph's going to run you through that's awesome. But you have this mental health, like this mindfulness, practice and just, with the superhero element, like the spirituality that it's like three legs of a stool that kind of help you be athletic and showing up how you want to. And I think that as an athlete, you spend so much time, like I know in my life, you spend so much time trying to develop an identity. You never really take it off. And I think as I've grown older, that's been difficult because I do have aspects of me that, you said, it was, sometimes it's like a faint whisper.
Yeah.
Like my thoughts of pursuing who I want to be is more like an impatient child, like tugging at a parent's shirt, like, hey, pay attention to me. It's another day's gone by. You haven't, shown up for me, so I think even as I continue to build my own practice and our own family, like Lexi and I don't have children yet, but I've also admired the way that you and Giovanni, your husband, have grown with this together and the way you've brought this practice to your family. Like that to me is something, you're a great role model for us. The one I wanted to ask you about was the gratitude and the failure practice you've been using.
Oh yeah. This is one of my favorite things.
That's a home run.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite things. So I wish, and this is, I love talking about this because if there's a mom or a dad that's listening now, they're like, oh, let me try this. If I had someone teach me about gratitude when I was 8, like it would have been such a game changer for me. But what we do with the kids, there's a bunch of things that we do, but one of my favorite things in terms of developing mental resilience and grit and the ability to solve problems is with gratitude, because I strongly, especially now with the pandemic, it's so easy to fall into this fearful, mindset of scarcity where your environment can seem to be shrinking. And what we do every night with the kids is dinner time is sacred for us. So there's no devices at the table. Everyone is down at the table between 5:30 and 6, depending on what I'm making that night. And what we do is as we're eating, we will go around the table and we will ask everybody. So we have a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, all boys. And we will ask them to name the things that they are grateful for today and where they failed. So I had to reframe the word failure for them in the beginning, because when we first were asking them fail, even my 7-year-old was like, I didn't fail. I was perfect. Like I was a good boy. He already had that negative association with the word. So we had to reframe the word failure to mean what you learned. So we said, okay, so maybe you didn't fail in the way that you're thinking, but what did you learn today? What were something that didn't go the way that you wanted, and what did you learn from that? So that was the way that we were able to introduce the concept of failure. So they will go around and, my 7-year-old is still, we try to get him to talk about present moment things. Like my 9-year-old, my 14-year-old, they get it. My 7-year-old will sometimes say, I'm grateful for the plants. I'm grateful for mommy. Like he'll say the same things over and over again, which is fine. But I want him to start thinking about, eventually I'd like him to start thinking about, I'm really grateful for the food that's in front of me. I'm grateful for, the interaction I had with my teacher today, that I'm really getting this math equation that was challenging for me, whatever it is. So we go around gratitude first, and then where you failed or what you learned. So that has been, one of my favorite things for the family, because even myself, if I've had a rough day, like right now I'm homeschooling my kids, completely unqualified grade 4 teacher, completely unqualified grade 2 teacher. And like some days, it's hard, man. It's hard to be a teacher. It's like, if my teachers came back and were like, we want 1,000% raise, I'd say, here. Got it. No problem. Like, here, you take it. No problem. So, some days are rough. And then when we're sitting at the table, I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? Like, yes, it was tough, but what and it's a reset for me as well to come back to the present moment, because sometimes we can really ruminate. There's, areas of the brain that are just involved in like thinking and that circular thinking over and over again. And if you're focusing on something that's negative, like the hard day that you had at homeschool, that your son refused to do his rainforest project, or whatever, you can get into this spiral where your frontal lobe, which is the area of the brain that is completely involved in happiness and joy and thinking about the future and planning and structuring, it completely goes offline, and you just get into these more primitive areas of the brain that are involved in, anxiety and fear mongering. So yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I do with the kids.
And I guess my parents, like looking back, I played hockey. It's an expensive sport, so I was always acutely aware of their sacrifice. And there were a lot of conversations had around, Connor, we are very lucky as a family. You have opportunities A through Z. Not every kid is awarded these opportunities. Let's make room to really welcome them and be grateful for them. I think that was, strong. And I'm grateful that my parents raised, and we had 3 boys in our family too. So I know the ruckus that you're dealing with as a school teacher.
I'm going to go upstairs and all the pillows on the couch will be on the floor. Like if I leave for an hour, I know that there's one room that'll be destroyed, but I'm
going to have to text Giovanni thanking him for, keeping him to a dull roar while we talk.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also, growing up in sport, you have this deeply rooted, fear of failure. There are consequences. There are missed games. There are missed shifts. There are opportunities that close off to you with failure. And, it's been something that even, I'm 26 now. It's crazy to think about how long I've, been a pro hockey player now. But, early in my career, I would get very stuck. And you were talking about the primitive sort of cycle. I was classic for play a poor game. I'm talking, 7:00 game, get home at 10 o'clock, you eat dinner by 10:30 p.m. And it's 4, 5, 6 in the morning. Practice tomorrow's at 11. And I'm still turning. I'm still considering, what went wrong, why it happened. And I just, maybe it was my own, relationship with emotions. I don't think it was anyone's necessarily their fault, but I do know, because the 3 people in this podcast, the 3 groups, I guess, and this is where I get most of my social media sort of questions, is like heads of family, moms and dads trying to do right by their family, athletes or not, 20 somethings trying to do something, kids out of college, friends of mine that want to make a bigger impact in the world. Maybe they're trying to jump the corporate ladder, decide if that's what they want or not. Maybe they're on a health, mission and they consider me a resource. And then the third is really youth players. I get a lot of young players that reach out to me and say, Connor, how do you handle, what's your pregame warm up? What's your pregame meal? How do you work out? How do you practice? And I've tried to, and I was so excited when we were able to, connect to talk today, because I knew that this reshaping around failure is something that has to at least show its face. I don't think in youth sport it's going to be welcome yet, but there needs to be a conversation around failure, and you don't ask anybody to screw up. You don't want anyone to come down on a 2-on-1 and miss the net and not score a goal or whatever, but that facilitating that exploratory play, facilitating that continued passion of the game, because youth sports has gotten really professionalized. These kids are training hours upon hours, 365 days a year. And I know as a pro who I feed my family with this paycheck, like it's hard for me to show up 365 days a year. I don't think 12-year-olds are equipped to do it.
Yeah. And I think when fear is discouraged, like if that's like the worst, if people are trying to avoid failure at all costs, that's when you start to lose on creativity and, people having the willingness and the confidence to try new things. Like if you try something and it doesn't work out and you're shamed for it, or you beat yourself up over it because the culture is such that, failure is a bad thing, then you're much less likely to try something new or try something innovative the next time that opportunity arises. So I think that when we think about failure, I would love to see it celebrated. Like, good for you. You tried something new. You thought of something outside of the box that has not, been adopted common practice. And if this is, for the young players, I think this would be so helpful for them to be like, how can I get around, a defensive player or whatever in a unique and innovative way? And if you fail, like, so what? Good for you for trying. But I think that that's what I would love to see, because I think what you'll see there is more creation. You'll see a lot more creativity, and you'll see a lot more, I would say creativity and innovation. That's what I think comes from failure.
Well, that's what I've studied, even in talking to teammates that have, grown up in different environments. Like I'm from Chicago, so I grew up in our youth hockey city. You live in Toronto. Like it's very competitive at a very young age.
Yeah.
Where you are, but I've talked to, friends of mine that have grown up in like the Swedish system and the Finnish youth hockey. And it is interesting. Like those countries have had, histories of very, very talented players. And there is sort of this more exploratory sense, this more have fun. Okay, you found out maybe what didn't work. Let's try something else now. And it's really interesting.
How useful is that to have the template for what you don't know or you don't want? I mean, in life, really, but in the context of sport, like for you to have the template for what doesn't work and what you don't like is invaluable.
I agree, and it's been something I've tried to recognize in sport. And it's interesting in going through the podcast, sort of bio and determining. With, my producer, Colin Steingart, one of the things we really wanted to sort of focus on was high performance and wellness and mental and physical health, but through the lens of curiosity. And when I've approached my life with a sense of curiosity, it's like this energy generator, and it flips. It totally gets me into a state of wanting to learn, of embracing process over result, of dreaming. Coach yelled at me, for example, and maybe I shut down, for a shift or two where I was anxious. I wasn't in flow state anymore, so whenever I snap out of it, play the rest of the game. After the game, in my review process, if I can get curious about hey, that version of Connor, was kind of shook up for a second there. Why is that? What happened there? And it creates, a little bit more mindfulness in the moment, helps me hold on to flow state in real time. But it also has helped me, I've put a lot of work in my post-game process, learning the separation of church and state, how to drop the game and start to get ready for the next one. It's really been a great exercise and source of energy for me.
I love that. And I think what you're demonstrating as well, and when you do, if coach does yell at you and you are feeling more anxious, it's an invitation to go inward and say, okay, what is coming up for me right now? Why am I feeling anxious? What's triggering me here? And I think for a lot of us, I would say this is very true in sport. I'd say this is very true in the population at large, is we do not want to feel our feelings. If you are feeling anxious, you will do anything to make that anxiety go away, and you'll try to figure it out. You might have in your post game, recap. You might try to all the logistics and all the algorithms are going to be running, and how could I avoid that next time? And I think we're all guilty of this. But what I think is that is such a gift for you to say, okay, what is the trigger here? Why is this making me feel anxious? And sit with that and let that marinate, let yourself marinate in that feeling a little bit.
Well, and it's interesting because, you are a mom, you are a leader as a, with your chiropractic clinic, and it's interesting that if you were to ask any adult or coach, are you in control of how you feel all the time? The answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we coach these young athletes and demand that they feel a certain way about themselves or encourage them. And I just think it's unrealistic. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's human. I think, in my own practice, as I become more veteran in the NHL, one of the things that would make me anxious, jump on the ice for warm up, legs feel gassed. I have no jump. When I was younger, you'd start the inner dialogue. How can I fix this? I got to grab maybe something, a snack from one of the trainers, or maybe I just got to get a couple hard laps and I'll feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is I've actually gotten much more comfortable, just through the sheer experience of like, it's all right. I've played a lot of good games a little tired. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I find like that athleticism versus like the other one is doing the best with what you got versus trying to like show up with your A+ game every night. And I think you prepare to do that. You prepare, you eat right, you sleep a lot, you do all that you can for the A+ game, but it's not sustainable. You're not going to bat 100. You're not going to bat 1,000 on that.
Yeah. And I think that you start to, your game will also depreciate as your anxiety goes up around it. So, we were talking before, I mentioned, just kind of unhinging the fear and the self-regulation. Like, okay, if my legs feel gassed, I have to get to do this. I got to do that. That is an anxious response to things where, from experience that, sometimes you aren't feeling at 100%, but you still have an awesome game. So I like this idea of divorcing the inner critic from and driving the bus for every single action that we have in our life. And when you need to show up and perform, yes, you need to show up and perform. No one's saying, oh, my legs feel gassed, like I just, I'm going to go back to the change room and not play. But I think that releasing the fear and anxiety around your response to that is important.
And I'm really happy we've gone down this path, and because I've seen, through your, platform, your channels, you are trying to engage in some of these conversations. You were talking about empowering women. I'm trying to empower youth athletes, men and women my age, and really parents that are just curious about, my path in the NHL and that. But, why have you shifted into the podcasting space, the sort of self-development space? Because I think you've done a really nice job. I've really been following along, and I was so honored when you first wanted me on your podcast. I heard your list. I was like, oh man, I better get my shit together here. I was like, there's some smart people on this podcast.
Oh yeah, you were first for sure. I had made a list. I think were you episode 10?
I was in the top 10 for sure. I remember because it was the only time I ever got in the top 10. I was drafted 137, so I was pumped to go in the first round.
I was so impressed with you from the moment I met you. You were one of the first people I wanted to interview for sure, because your wisdom, you also have in many ways like an old soul, and you have this old school wisdom in such a young person. It's really, you are an impressive individual. So you are definitely somebody that I wanted to speak to. Podcasting has been a desire, kind of speaking about like only the desires that you have, are meant for you. I've had this desire for years. I remember I think it was 2016, I became absolutely obsessed with Tim Ferriss, like the long form, the detail.
He's so good.
He's a dream, like the witty remarks. He has this way of, being self-depreciating, but also holding his own. Anyway, when I would listen to his interviews that were like 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever they were, it was so apparent the amount of effort that he had put in to preparing for these guests. Like he would dig up information that I had never heard, that very well-known people that you had never heard this before. And I was like, God, what a dream. And I remember actually I have this memory, I've spoken to Giovanni about this. Gio and I used to go on these like walking coffee dates. So we'd grab a cup of coffee and then we'd kind of walk around the city aimlessly for hours. And I remember us talking about Tim Ferriss, and I said, one day I want to have a podcast like that. Like what a way to feed your intellect by understanding, an upcoming guest, understanding their body of work, and then having the privilege to sit down with them and discuss their body of work. Like, how amazing is that? So I've always, for as many, like at least since 2016, I remember saying, I don't want to be the female version of Tim Ferriss, because that's not right. But I want to have a similar voice that Tim does, for men and women to be able to deconstruct complex, I'm a bio nerd, right? But not everybody is as jazzed about, the Krebs cycle as I am. So, you want to be able to deconstruct it in a way that you can get the information in a usable way for most people so that they can make use of it. And I want to, another kind of through line is I want other people to see a strong female voice having these conversations, so that, if there are women who are listening, they can say, oh yeah, like I like what she's doing. Like, and give, because when you see someone going for it, like whether or not my podcast is ever as big as Tim's or not is irrelevant. It's that I am going for it and trying to produce the best body of work that I can. And that in and of itself gives other people permission to chase the desires that they have. So that's sort of like a multi-pronged, belabored, explanation, but that's why I have the podcast.
Well, I was hoping you'd go down that road, because was really the catalyst for me. And actually your husband Gio was, really, we had met at one of the Archangel Summit events, and then, stayed in contact, and he had made mention, Connor, I really think you might serve well in this space. And I had, Lexi was actually the first one that ever, she started to, I call it bug, but she used to say, hey, I think you'd love podcasts, Connor. You should look into them. Mm-hmm. And I would literally scoff and say, no, I have enough on my plate that I'm trying to become a better reader. I am trying to build these other habits that I, have already committed to. And then the day that I began to listen, I was hooked. Like I would drive to the rink early and stay in my car to like listen to, whether it was, Tim Ferriss was another, big one for me. And it's been really fun to engage with people I look up to's story, to really be sitting there and trying to highlight, okay, what is so special or great about this person? Like, what is awesome about this person that we can talk about? What is lighting them on fire in the world, that I can talk about with them tomorrow? And just, it's really fueled other aspects of my life, because it's been interesting, with, being on the NHL on pause. The goal of like what I'm training towards is kind of abstract. Like, I don't know when we're going to play, and that's rare, because usually I know, there's a game at 7:00 tomorrow. I'm getting ready for that. Yeah. Or even in the off season, you kind of know, okay, September 15th, training camp. So I've tried to, you draw on inspiration different ways on different days. And, just in getting ready for our podcast today, like I was so excited to, and frankly nervous. Like you do get a little nervous. You want to get it not right. You don't think there's like a perfect podcast, but I want to speak with each guest about what's their fire. Why are they the way they are? Why are they so great? How did they do it?
And meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're doing well. From one podcast, I mean, what number is this? Is this number 3? Is this your 3rd interview or more?
Yes. This is my 3rd interview.
Interview. Like your conversation is awesome. Like for me, that has always been, and that's something that I wanted to take from Tim. And even Joe Rogan is another person that I look up to in terms of his conversational skills. He's just like, all right, so we're live, and then he somehow pulls like the most genius things from people. But yeah, being conversational and meeting the person where they are and extracting, because the other thing too is everybody else has their sound bites, right? Like, you speak to, I've spoken to, people on the podcast who have their sound bites. You can tell that they have these sort of rehearsed things, but that I'm not interested in that because I can listen to any other podcast to get that stuff. I want the juicy stuff that comes after the sound bites. So tell me about, I had a guest and we were talking about brain health and different, neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and cognitive dementia and stuff. And I was like, okay, I want to geek out with you on this certain gene, ApoE4, because this is like a big predictor for Alzheimer's, blah, 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 blah. And he was so appreciative, because you get to a certain stature and you get, you sort of listen to one person on one podcast and you've listened to them on all. And afterwards, he was so appreciative. He's like, thank you so much for asking me that question. Like, I don't think I've had anybody who's ever asked me that. And I had one of my heroes, David Sinclair, was on the podcast. So he talks about longevity and how things like fasting and being cold, this can activate certain processes in the body to help with extending lifespan. And he's been on Joe Rogan. He's been on all the big podcasts. And afterwards, he said to me, it's so obvious how much work you put into the prep. And he's like, I don't like to blow sunshine, but this was one of the best interviews I've ever had. And Giovanni heard me. So I was like trying to keep it together. I was like, oh, okay. And
Whatever. Thanks. I get that all the time. Yeah.
So I literally pressed, end call or whatever. And I started screaming at the top of my lungs. And Gio's like, what the fuck is going on? So he saw me, he started recording me and I was yelling. I'm like, David Sinclair just said that, So for me, podcasting is also, I can't remember what the original question was, but I'll just say that podcasting is also, it's a way for me to connect with people, right? I can't see you in person, but I can talk to you this way. But it's also a way for me to feed that insatiable hunger and curiosity. We've been talking a little bit about curiosity today around learning more about people because everybody has an interesting story, everyone.
And this is what I love to talk about, how I want to go through life. I love talking about the ins and outs of physical health and does intermittent fasting apply to sport? And should I be training with weights or, be trying to myofascially stretch more? There are different elements of, and I know you use the word geek and you use that affectionately.
Yes.
And you own that word. I call it in my own world, Revenge of the Nerds in terms of I want to be the nerdy hockey player.
Yeah.
And it's been something that, believe it or not, the podcast, this is not the type of conversation we have in the locker room. So in terms of, we talked about respecting that, that whisper, that tugging child at your shirt. I love having these, they juicify me, these conversations. They take me out of the day-to-day rigors of, because it's very routine based, trying to facilitate and respect and protect, your talent as a player. And that there's a different relationship with Kaizen there too. That's very beautiful, but also just, there's a nerve before each podcast. I don't know what you're going to say today.
Right.
I can have all the notes, all the prep but at some point, if there's something that's really speaking to you, I got to be ready to roll.
Yeah.
And it's been a really rewarding process.
Yeah, the best thing a guest can say to you is, I've never talked about this before, but...
It's not a podcast until that's the moment it starts. Okay, now we can get into it.
Yeah, man. Exactly.
And just trying to give back what we've taken. I think it was Tim Ferriss and Peter Attia. And Peter Attia, I thought I was obsessive. That guy really put me in my place. In terms of, someone who can really decide to put his mind to something. And they were talking about the duality of being able to hold something you want to say, but still listening to the other person. And that was the final nudge that I'm going to do this. I'm I need that skill. I don't have that skill. I need to practice it. I need to screw it up. I need to nearly ask the guest to repeat themselves. I need to totally ask a question where they do repeat themselves because I don't think I have that skill. I would just blurt out, I'm an impulsive conversationalist. Sometimes I'll cut people off. Lexi will gently remind me that I'm doing that from time to time. And that was like the final nudge. I said, I need that in my life. I need to practice. And it sounds like this is a good way to do it.
That is next level ninja skills. Yeah. I have a little piece of paper that so if there's something I want to ask them, I just like scribble the main word and I'll just kind of look down at it. So I still haven't mastered it yet in complete transparency. So on the videos, when you see me kind of looking down, it's like, that's the thought I had, but I still can't hold it in my head yet because I get so enthralled with what the person is saying. And then we go off on, some other tangent.
It's the way of the podcast. I think it's, you can't tame this beast. There is no perfect conversation. I love that, and I don't know. I did want to talk a little bit about, the kryptonite side. Like where are you struggling in your current process? Like what is difficult for you because I know you want to write a book and I'm so happy for your podcast growth, but what, because there's sort of like different growing pains, right? Like there's that excitement, you launch, no one has any expectations. You don't have any expectations. You're just excited about this beginner's mind thing.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden a couple episodes go by and now where you're starting to screw up. Now you know what actually sounds better. It's funny. I did have a couple podcasters reach out to me and say, hey, Connor, I know that it's weird to listen to yourself, but you need to. Like you need to listen to your own podcast so you can get better. And I'm like, I know I respect while that may be difficult for other people. This is not hard for me because I watch video where after I turn pucks over in front of 20,000 people last night and all my teammates are there to see, like it's been cool to leverage that. But certainly
something called pod fade. There's like pod fade. There's like a, after 10 episodes, like there's like a, an eternal graveyard on Apple Podcasts with like 10 episodes or less. Cause people are like, oh damn, that's actually a lot of work.
So where are you with that? Like, where are you with that process?
With my own kryptonite and my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's, the ongoing, my kryptonite is the ongoing narrative around who do you think you are to continue doing this? Like who, are you really smart enough to go toe to toe with such and such a doctor and have a conversation around it? Are you really, capable enough to understand the concepts? I had a cardiologist on, it hasn't been released yet. It's one I recorded before the whole Corona thing, but we were talking a lot about lipids and people oversimplify like cholesterol and LDL and HDL. It's so complex. I mean, if you're talking about Peter Attia, if you've ever listened to his earlier, he's someone who I love and admire as well. He has a 5-part series in his podcast with, what's the guy's name? Thomas something. He's he's a expert in lipidology, and it's like 10 hours of this most beautiful, sermon on lipids. Anyway, so I had a cardiologist on, and of course I know that we're going to be talking about lipids, and I took like a week to prepare for it. And even on the call, it was like, oh my God, it's like so confusing. It's, it can be so confusing. So for me, the ongoing narrative is, who am I? Do I really have the capability to understand these things? And am I, the responsibility that I have to the people that listening to me, am I leading them astray? And I think, for me, the reason why the podcast exists is that I just believe in myself temporarily, a squeak more than I don't. It's like,
yeah.
Like I just
can be 51-49. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I just, for a moment, I temporarily suspend the disbelief and I just sort of, fail forward fast. Like I just kind of put my head down and do it. And that's how, that's why the podcast is here. That's why, I post, step videos of I would have never done that like a year ago, like to show someone my workout. Never. So scared of, people criticizing me and telling me like, who do you think you are? Like, why, that weight exercise is not safe. What if I have a bad back? I'd never do anything like that. But now it's just like, this is who I am. So, and then I just get those like little temporary, like, this is who I am. Like, if you don't like it, it's okay. And then I just post something when I'm feeling that way.
Yeah.
And then, the repercussions, they come if they come. So
I've been trying to sit a lot with, Seth Godin talks about this, like the responsibility to lead, where it's clear that he has, like in his thoughts, what a smart guy, frankly. Brilliant. And with the Archangel Beacon event, I was able to be a part of, he discusses like this duality of there is no perfect, like tie it with a bow thought. There is no like end of a thought. It can be thought and edited into eternity. But also you have a responsibility to the people that you care about, that care about you, to at least put some work in. Like, and he struck like this balance in describing how he respects and values attention of who's listening to him and who might be positively affected, while also like dismissing perfect. Right. You don't get a seat at the table anymore. Mm-hmm. And just his, I every time I listen to him or read anything he writes, I leave thinking what a profound thought process behind him.
Yeah, and he said something recently that I thought was really great, talking about imposter syndrome and the inner critic and all that. And he said, you feel like an imposter because you are. He was like, you are an imposter. You don't have it mastered yet. You're moving outside of your comfort zone and you're doing something that you don't have mastery in. So technically that would make you an imposter. But, if everybody didn't, like I said before, temporarily suspend that disbelief and do, just move forward, nothing would ever happen. So yeah, Seth is, the way that he can deduce it, his thinking is profound.
How did you announce the podcast? Remind me, because what I can say is one of the reasons I wanted to for sure start this, aside from the awesome conversations with people, like yourself, was I wanted to practice dealing with fear of judgment on purpose, which is interesting because you would think being an athlete, I should have that down. Like there's a lot of people in the rink every night, but for whatever reason, I've learned to like dismiss that. And even given all those years of practice and, normally being pretty resilient. Again, I talked a little bit about, some of the anxiety inducing situations earlier, but like the night I announced I wanted to launch this, that it was coming out next Friday, I wanted to throw up that night.
Yeah. I don't know how I did it. I think what I had done, being the geek that I am, was I think I recorded like 10 episodes. I might have recorded, 8 to 9 episodes. And I was like, okay, I have like enough material here that I can't not do this anymore. I don't remember how I announced it though.
That's what I'm trying to do now. I learned of the concept of backfill actually from you when Giovanni was like, yeah, we're going to, would you want to come on, Steph's podcast? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to do backfill. And then, we're going to release them as they come on. I'm like, oh, that's how I could do it during a season. Because I was concerned about the regularity. And once you have a concept that, I wanted to be consistent. I didn't want to start something and then not finish, because I can't think like that sometimes. Sometimes I have in my head like more tabs open than I do finished projects. I can be a bit of a dreamer or, an idealist that way. Just think I have an infinite amount of hours in a day. So the podcast is nice because you do have to set appointments with people and then you got to show up. Like you got to be on the call, so I knew if, just based on, what I cared about my word, that once I put it out there that I said I was doing this, I knew I would do it.
Yeah.
But until I had people to let down, or people that were expecting something of me, I knew I might drag my feet.
Yeah. And even if you wanted to drag your feet, once you set an appointment with someone, like your integrity will drag you to the, drag you through across the finish line. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, I think it's in many ways, your career has really prepared you with the NHL, with everybody watching you and every move, and all the sports commentators, and well, if you just did this or just did, what's different here is that everybody expects you to play your absolute best for the devs, right? But now in this format, you are expressing your opinions and your thoughts, and you don't know what's going to happen. And there's going to be, meandering conversations, and all of a sudden you're not just a player anymore. You are the leader of the conversation. And then we get a really in-depth, intimate look at your opinions, your ideas, your dreams, your desires. And that is, that's part of the reason, if I'm being totally honest, why I didn't start the podcast in 2016 and I only started it in 2019, at the end of 2019, because I was like, oh my God, people are going to learn the ins and outs of my voice. Like, they're going to know my voice. Like, it's so, even just to, because you have to have a good mic, and they're going to be able to listen to the little nuances in your vocal, in the intonation, and, your thoughts, and some thoughts that I have, and some ideals, some philosophical constructs that I have around health are contrary to what is consensus. So, putting yourself out there is a courageous act. So I commend you for doing it, and I'm really excited to see how you grow into it and what comes of this. And you can, just from one podcaster to another, you can batch record. Like, I think I have 3 months of 12 weeks of interviews that are queued up, because sometimes I'll do like 2 or 3 in 1 week.
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to do. Just trying to, because we are at home right now, just trying to get, not get as many done, but have allowance on the other side of it in case the season were to restart. We're playing every other day or whatever. It is funny too, just like the way inertia works and how long you sat with that thought to start a podcast. Cause I was very similar. Like, I wanted to do one last summer and it was like every month, okay, do I have it in me to launch? No, the season started. I don't think I can do it now. Oh, maybe I'll revisit it in November. No, I got injured. I gotta make sure and all of a sudden, I had enough reasons at the time, in my opinion, to say no. But I mean, I really labored over the decision to launch for over a year. And I think, that's worth sharing, just the nature of, what may look like an overnight success or an overnight effort. Like, you got to plant those seeds early, and it takes time.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to, this is not an analogy that's going to be relevant to you, but sometimes you have to try on the dress and see if it fits, like sometimes you're just like, how do I feel in this dress? Okay. I don't feel that great in it yet, and that's what it was for me. I was the same. It was like, well, I have the practice, and I have young kids, and, and then I have to attend to their needs, and, I have the relationship that they have with their father. And there was always something that I could say, well, this is not the time to do it. So
I did have a question about you and Giovanni's relationship, because I'll be married 2 years now in July.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It is, you and Giovanni both have your own style around high performance and well-being. And I'm curious about, like, how do you guys work that dynamic? Because sometimes it's hard when you have 2 people in one home trying to do their best every day, get after it. It's an endless game. It's an infinite game. How do you both balance? Because I actually got this question from a close friend that said, it's I won't say who it was, but she had texted me and said, hey, how do you manage being as focused as you are, trying to accomplish all that you want to? Because at some point there is a cost, right? Like, at some point you got to leave your podcast prep and go make sandwiches for the kids in the morning, or maybe not sandwiches,
Yeah. No, not sandwiches.
You know what I mean? Not sandwiches. Yeah. I caught that, I know your game.
Right now they have, in my slow cooker, I have tomato sauce that I made, ground beef, and cauliflower, broccoli, and what else do I have in there? Garlic, I think. Anyway, so it is a dance. I definitely, Giovanni's dream is Archangel. It is to be serving others, to help entrepreneurs, irrespective of their income, to make meaningful impact in their sphere of focus. And one of the ways that I think, so for me, in terms of how our household works, I tend to do more of the cooking because Gio doesn't know how to cook. And also I'm really
and you have to eat it. Yeah.
So I'll just say this. He can make really good eggs.
That's fair.
And he thinks that he makes eggs better than me, but he does not. But when you meet him, you can say, "Oh, I heard your eggs are way better than stuff." We actually had the kids vote on it. We were like, "Close your eyes. We're both going to make you some scrambled eggs." But anyway, so I do a lot of the cooking because, I also enjoy it. I really enjoy, I love my cookware. I love the process of creating. Like for me, it's a little bit like Giovanni loves his showers. Like his showers are his creativity time. Like that's when he gets all the downloads. When I take my mind off of something, when I'm, stir frying something or I'm chopping, that's actually when I actually get a lot of my ideas. So I tend to do a lot of the cooking. The kids, right now, the homeschooling is, our older son, Michael, is on online school all day long. And he's 14, so he can sit for a longer period of time. Right now, my work is, if I'm being honest, is much more interrupted because I am running from this room where I record my podcast and do my work to, helping the boys do long division or doing whatever. So I tend to do more of the cooking and right now more of the child-focused stuff. But in the evening, Giovanni is really good at kind of shutting off after a certain amount of time where we can all come together at the dinner table for our family dinners. That's sort of my that's like my sacred family time with him. And his genius, I think, comes early in the morning. So he'll wake up before the house wakes up so that, there's still the stillness of the morning and the quiet, and he can do a lot of his strategy and uninterrupted work then. But right now, I would say that we're both just, trying to keep all the balls up in the air. Some of them are falling, but, we're just trying to just do what we have to do for both businesses. And I support him completely. It's 100% his dream to be serving the people that he does. And he's discovered in recent years that he's an excellent coach, so he has coaching clients.
Truly is.
He is, that is really his genius. And yeah, we're just, it's a give and take.
Yeah. I ask because I'm trying to, at least in my experience, I am not someone that can wing the day. I do much better when I chunk my time and I create hard beginnings and ends to things.
Yeah.
Like I am going to work on the podcast prep from 4 to 5 and not a minute longer because otherwise it could be 8:30 and I missed dinner and I've been totally absent, for my family. And I think it's, really it's just maturity around, my goals, my obsessions, like learning how to both do my best while also understanding, other aspects of my life, require attention and you got to have energy for when that happens. If I learn anything from Giovanni, I want to steal like his unassuming smirk. Right? Where he just stares at you for like a second after you
and he's like
you say something and he's looking,
Yes.
like he is looking so into you. If I can learn just one thing from your husband, it's that.
Yeah. He has this uncanny talent as well, where he could be putting on an event for 4,000 people and be totally chilled. He can walk and people are like, "Oh my God, it's so great. Aren't you stressed?" And he was like, "No, I'm not stressed. No, I'm good." And look into their soul for a moment after and then continue walking.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a special guy.
I really appreciate your time today. I want to be respectful because I know you got a lot going on still with your own podcast, the kids, Gio. Truly awesome conversation today. I learned a lot myself and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it today.
anytime I can spend time with you is time well invested. So thank you for inviting me on. I'm honored to be here. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to your next TikTok video. And
that'll be tonight. Yeah. That's actually the real reason I have to get off, as much as I am concerned about your kids' lunches. Lexi's over there, tapping her toes like, hey, we got a TikTok tonight.
100%. And looking forward to when I get to see you and Lexi in person. So
yeah, us too. We miss Toronto a lot.
Yeah,
that's why I wore my thank you Toronto hat. We miss it up there.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Stephanie Estima. Truly outstanding. I'm excited to see how we pump this out. I will let you know when we're going to. And thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Colin. Shit. Yeah, I forget that one every time. We're trying to have an epithet in our,
okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Really, and this is kind of an open mic question is, Steph, what in the world right now is really lighting you on fire? What is, we talked a little bit about your Better podcast, but what are you laser focused on getting better at? What is lighting you on fire in the world today?
I think I don't know how this is going to sound, but what I am laser focused on right now is channeling more of my feminine. So I want to get crystal clear on my desires. I want to get crystal clear on honoring, because I'm like you, I can sit, 4 to 5 and I can look up and it's 10 o'clock. I can get so into my work. And for so many years, I would walk around literally my body was just a mechanism to get my brain where it wanted to go. I was just so disconnected from my body. So honoring what my body needs, which is movement. I crave, so I will, kind of 1 to 3 o'clock, I will usually go and take a yoga break. So just kind of honoring that and honoring my inner child. That is, and developing a relationship with her. That is what I am really laser focused on, because even during this time too, I have found as an artist formerly known as a perfectionist and a control freak, there's something about this pandemic that is kind of it's a bit of a mind fuck for me. I can't totally understand the virus. There's so many different theories from different healthcare professionals around what the mechanism of action is, and is it binding to the ACE2 receptor, and is vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. So the element of control for me, I've been much more triggerable. I've been much more agitated. So just listening to my inner child when she, and kind of just being more gentle with myself. That's really what I've been more laser focused on in the past 5 to 6 weeks since this whole thing has come up. There's always a goal for me to be able to learn new tricks with resistance training. I want to be able to do a human flag. So I don't know. That's kind of that's what I want to, that's something. Yeah.
It's honestly the coolest thing in the world. But
yeah. So that's what I'm focused on right now, is just, honoring my, my somatic form, honoring the developing a relationship with my inner child, and being okay with surrendering to the things that I cannot control.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. And my relationship, it's been interesting with the COVID quarantine for me too, because, a question that I think about, I don't know if every pro athlete thinks about this, but one of the things that I get asked all the time, and, it's something that comes up consistently, is what do you want to do when you're done? What would you do? What would you do when you're done? Mm-hmm. And this has been a forced practice for, okay, if the NHL locked its doors and there's no league, how are you going to provide service? What value do you bring to the world? Mm-hmm. What's even fun for you? You got to think about that aside from the game.
Isn't that such an interesting question? What is fun for you? That's a good question. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to even be clear on what you want.
Yeah.
How hard is the question, what do you want for dinner tonight?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you want for dinner?
What do you want for dinner?
Yeah, I don't know.
Every couple plays that game. And it's,
yeah.
So I'm trying to play that game with, I guess, my destiny, my life in terms of, okay, what do you want? Because you have time right now where, there is no ice rink that's open right now.
Yeah.
And I've been at the mercy a little bit of the wave of what's going on out there too, just like emotionally, just knowing that, you know, people are struggling and what am I doing to try and make the world better. So one form is the podcast. Hopefully, you know, it's entertaining, you know, for people. And I think we've done a good job with that, but you know, there's definitely some days where I'm more gratitude focused. I am grateful for my own, you know, journey and what's going on inside of it. But, you know, I've also tried to respect a little bit of the grief I felt, you know, for people out there that this is really tough for them. And I'm rooting for you.
You want to be able to say to life, I want a steak and lobster for dinner. That's what you want. That's what you're trying to do.
I love that. Wow. What an incredible individual, Dr. Stephanie Estima. I am so thankful she joined us today. I always learn from our conversations together, but there's something about when you sit down with someone for well over an hour that there's just a flow and a depth you can get to with no interruptions. And I learned a lot today. I am so grateful she came on. I also want to continue we did some of our reverse sponsorships on this podcast. I also want to give a shout out to just some individuals that I also, Lexi and I, have gained a lot of inspiration from. We're all still on quarantine right now. We are, you know, all trying to get creative with food. You know, if you're sick of cooking or you don't want to eat out, Ronnie from Primal Gourmet is who we draw a lot of our inspiration from at home in terms of what recipes we go with. Also, Terry from No Crumbs Left. They are both paleo style, Whole30 driven food bloggers and Instagram pages. They do an awesome job with step-by-step tutorials. Lexi usually makes our meals because she's the superior chef, but honestly, I can follow them. They both do a great job. And also Stephanie with Cook by Color. She does this like fridge foraging concept where people will Instagram her, direct message her what they have in the fridge, and she'll just throw something wonderful together. So she's a great option in case, you know, there's a lag between, you know, food delivery services right now. And simply just to make use of what you got in the fridge, because we all do that from time to time. So those are a couple resources that we really lean on, people that we know and love. Show them some love, follow them, support them. They'll gift you with some great recipes, some things to feed your family, some food items. And again, you know, Lexi and I, it's kind of our style. We shop local. We talk about buying local and supporting our small farmers during this COVID-19 quarantine. Please continue to do that. I know, you know, all the farmers we've bought from have been hugely appreciative, and frankly, the food's always better. So, win-win. This far for listening, no matter where you are in the world right now. I'm really grateful we got to spend the last hour and a bit together. Truly, always appreciative of your attention and of you taking part in the growth of this podcast. Continue to please like and share and subscribe and show your mom or your dad how to work this. Send it to your men's league team, whomever you think might enjoy participating in our conversations here, participating in our podcast here. We welcome any and all. So thank you again. I'm truly grateful and humbled by your support, and I continue to look forward to our growth.